So welcome, Bhaven. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know, Bhaven is one of our mortgage partners and actually our longest standing mortgage partner to date. Really have enjoyed working with you, Bhaven. And today what I wanted to do was just pick your brains. And I think our audience as well wanted to understand a bit more about what exactly is going on in the mortgage market, in the property market, because, we are in a bit of a quiet bit at the moment. Last September, when Liz Truss took over, there was a whole hoo-ha, and then Rishi Sunak came in, and we said, "Oh my God, it's going to be better or it's going to be worse." There was a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it just seems to have quietened down a bit. So we don't really know. Nobody really knows what's going on. So first question for you, Bhaven, then is what's happening in the property market right now?
Yeah. So yes, you're right. Good of you to touch on the September effect. I think that's now in the past, if you ask me. I have seen, certainly as we get deeper into 2023, people are coming back. Now, they're not coming back in their droves, don't get me wrong, but people are coming back. I think people have realized that we are now in a new norm. Interest rates are where they are. They've seen cost of living, they've seen the Ukraine, they've seen all this going on in the background. The Tory leadership, but all of that now is in the past. But what's going to now happen in terms of property, I think people are now realizing that if I need to get onto the property ladder or do something, if I wait, this is going to happen. If I wait, there's never an exact moment. But what we have seen is that it's a little bit more favorable. And genuinely, if I spoke to you in January, if I spoke to you in February and March, we're only a week in, but it's a better month than February, and it's a better month than January. So in short, people are coming back.
Fantastic. And it's definitely something that we've seen in the property market is that back, July, August last year, every man and his dog wanted to buy a property. September happened and nobody wanted to buy a property. And as a result, of course, for the people that were still interested and did have the ability to, finance these properties, they were able to pick up some really great deals because they weren't waiting around and hanging around for mortgage lenders. Mortgage rates were really high at that point, and then they've kind of started to decrease a little bit. And what we have seen from the property side of things is that the competition is still there. It's not. It's definitely quieter than it was a year ago, but it's nowhere near as quiet as like where the only people bidding. There's definitely some competition there, but because of the minimal competition, what we're finding is that the ability to negotiate the prices is a little bit better as well. And I guess from your side, when you look at putting mortgage applications in for a lot of the properties that we do for our clients or whatever, presumably you're seeing as well that maybe before we used to buy at like 160 and now we're buying at 150. You might be seeing some of that reduction in price as well coming through on your side.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. But I think the point to note here is that they're still coming. It's not like it's not all doom and gloom. So people out there who are born warriors, not sure where you're coming from, because genuinely it is still revolving, albeit at a slightly slower rate compared to 12 months ago, but it's still revolving.
And this is what you're referring to as the new norm. It's going to be like this, maybe pick up a little bit, but ultimately this is the new norm.
I think so for the foreseeable. I'm not saying permanent, but for the foreseeable, that's what we see.
Okay, perfect. And the next question I wanted to then pick is, we've talked about the property market, but then what's actually happening with current mortgage rates themselves? And specifically, I don't know if you can answer this, but for personal name versus limited company, what are the different rates that you're seeing right now in both of those categories?
Yeah. So again, there's been a change in that. We were very skewed in terms of volume when it came to fixed rate mortgages, be it 2 years and 5 years. What's happened in the last few months, definitely since September, is there are more variable and trackers available. Now, what that's also done, now that we've seen the other side of it, the lenders have seen or have had a chance to digest what happened towards the end of last quarter, they've also now brought back more favorable rates on the fixed. So for a while, fixed rates are we sure we're doing the right thing? Because they had actually shot up so high, 6s and 7s, etc. What's happening?
So you're talking about, when you say 6s and 7s, just to be clear for the audience, what you're saying is that at one point buy-to-let mortgages, fixed rates for even 2 years would have been something like 6.5, 7.5, that kind of region.
Certainly into the 5 point something, 6 point something, some even touching 7, depending on circumstances, type of lender, etc. So yes, they were in that sort of level.
And that's compared to, if we just rewind for, say, 12 months ago, we would have been looking at what, 2.99, 3.15, 3.35, that kind of rate.
Yeah, we were looking at the mid to high 2s and the low to mid 3s, depending on 2-year and 5-year. That's 12 months ago. Today, although rates have gone up, when I say rates, I'm talking about the Bank of England base rate has been rising. It's been rising for a year now. Everyone's fully aware of it.
Yeah.
But I think, and from what I'm reading and hearing, we are towards the peak of rises. Some quarters are saying we may have peaked in rises, but I'm not so sure. We're at 4% at the moment. We may get to 4.25, 4.5 in the middle of this year. So June, July, we might be in the mid 4s. But what's actually happened, the rates on fixed 2 years, 5 years, and now 7 years as well, they've come down slightly to what they were 3-4 months ago. So they're, again, attractive in today's terms. When I say attractive, I'm talking about today's terms. This is the new norm after all. So we're seeing rates into the low to mid 4s, ranging to mid to high 4s, depending on 2-year, 5-year loan to values, etc.
That's in personal name, is it, or limited company?
Yeah, so this is in personal name. Limited company rates are slightly higher, but they're not that far apart. There might be a quarter of a percent in it. Maybe 0.5% in it. They are certainly higher. But I'd like to stress and add at this point, rates aren't everything.
Okay.
Yeah. What I mean by that, lenders have cottoned onto this. So you might see a headline rate, or you might hear someone say to you, well, I got it at 4.05 or 4.09. Additional costs need to be, or other costs need to be factored in. These are your valuation costs, your arrangement fees, product fees, etc. Now, you might find a lender, because we had one in February, at below 4%. Now, that was 3.99.
Yeah.
The arrangement fee for that was quite high.
Yeah.
So what's happened is that lenders need to make money. We get that. It's a business at the end of the day. So although you might see a headline rate of below 4%, or could have seen it earlier this year, below 4%, their fees for getting onto that was quite high. And sometimes that doesn't make it prudent or worthwhile.
And to put that into an analogy, just for the audience that are listening to this, what we're saying is that previously lenders would be like British Airways. It's 4% and that's it, nothing else. That's the way it is. And almost like that. Now what we're seeing is that lenders are being a bit more like EasyJet, where it's 3.99 or 3.35 or whatever. But if you want to go to the toilet on the plane, you've got to pay an extra 50 quid. If you want to have a break, a sandwich on the plane, it's another 50 quid. So they're finding these other ways of putting these fees in, sneaking them in, if you like, to make their margin, I suppose.
Absolutely. So I can give an example. There's one lender which we're working on for a client at the moment. 26 different versions of a 5-year fixed, ranging from 4.29 to 6.29. And the differences were the arrangement fee that you pay. So the lower the rate,
of course,
the higher the arrangement fee. The higher the rate, the lower the arrangement fee. And the difference ranged from 2.5% of loan amount to 7% of loan amount. Listen to me, 7% of loan amount.
Wow. So is this basically a case of 6 and 2 3s?
Yeah.
Okay. So almost like whether you go for the 7% or whether you go for the 4% or whatever it is, actually they're making the money in some way. And I suppose that's exactly why, Bhaven, then that's why people use mortgage advisors. That's why we use mortgage advisors, because the mortgage advisor can see that and can see all the other rates and can say, although that one looks like it's good because they've made it look like it's good, when you look inside the nitty-gritty, the detail, you can find what actually is good and what actually isn't very good.
Yeah, and we actually did the exercise for the clients across the board, because that was the best lender because of their circumstances to go with. It's a matter of which one do we go with. And lo and behold, the one with the lowest interest rate wasn't the one to go with. So
Yeah.
sometimes we get blinded by that, or skewed in our thoughts to say
Yeah.
the rate. It's not what it's all about. We will actually do the holistic whole
Research.
yeah, and then decide
Fantastic.
this is the way for you.
Fantastic. And then I just wanted to touch on something else that you mentioned earlier. You said that the Bank of England base rate is increasing, but you said, but actually fixed rate mortgages rates are decreasing. How does that work? Because isn't one determined by the other?
Yeah. So what happened is towards the end of last year, lenders got very nervous. After September, October, November, December, really awkward months. We've all heard about this. So what they did is actually increase rates by such a level to factor in future increases.
Okay.
But this
is them going from 3% to 7%, for example.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
What they've realized is, well, the factors that determined all of this is what's actually going on in the market. And the main thing was cost of living, the war, inflation, etc. Now, inflation at the moment is double digits. We get that. But all the news coming through is that potentially by the end of the year, it's going to be about half that. So then the lenders have gone, well, if it's going to be half that, we're factoring this now for the next 5 years, say, on a 5-year fixed deal. Perhaps we've overshot. Let's reduce it slightly. Let's reduce it slightly. So rates might have gone up slightly, but they've factored in such a buffer because of the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Now there's room to come down.
Because there's more certainty in the market now than there was in September.
Yeah.
So, I got you.
And also because the expectation of rates back towards the end of last year, September, October, was it's going to peak at 6, maybe 6.5, if you listen to some analysts. But now they've reduced that to say 4.25, 4.5. That's the sort of benchmark.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, we've come towards that near peak. If not, we may have peaked, but I'm not sure. It could go up another quarter, another half, but it's not going to be the 6.5 that was suggested only 4 or 5 months ago. So lenders have also acclimatized to that and realized that, well, maybe we've given too big a buffer. We need to reduce ours slightly.
Yeah, fantastic. And then I just want to come on to the current challenges, because whichever industry you operate in, there's always challenges. What are the challenges right now that you think that you're facing in your market? Some of the things that we're seeing, for example, is that whereas previously was the norm for everybody to get a 75% loan to value on a buy to let, some of the lenders are being a bit funny about it. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah. So to be able to borrow on a buy-to-let property, the lender calculates for this much rental coming in for this much, we can lend you this much. Okay. Those figures have changed because the rates have changed. Now, this is what they call the stress test. Okay. Based on this, you can borrow this. The rate at which that is calculated has changed. As I say, the rates have changed. So that's become a little bit harder, whereas before you could borrow, for example, 200,000 on a £700 rental. Today, £700 won't get you near £200,000 borrowing capacity.
It might give you, for example, 180, for example.
Or a lot less than that. It might be 140, 130. I don't know the exact figures. I'm just stretching the point to make a point. But with that in mind, what the buyer needs to be aware of is that 25% model doesn't necessarily work anymore. You might have to go to 30%. You might have to go to 35%. You might have to go to 40%. So whereas before, you could put in, on a £200,000 property, you could put in £50,000 and £700 would get you this much. Today, you might have to go to 60, 70, £80,000. If the rental amount is at the same 700, say, for example, you may not get that. You might have to increase your deposit. So I've seen deposits increase up to 40, 45% for some of our clients.
And this is not for everybody necessarily. So for example, let's say, I only had a certain amount of money to spend on this buy-to-let property that I'm buying. What you're saying, I think, is that in order for you to get the best rate with this particular lender, they might say, we want you to put in 40% rather than 25%, or 30% rather than 25%. But there could be another lender whose rate is a bit higher, but they would be willing to lend you 75. Is that right or not right?
To an extent, that's right. They have loosened those stress tests that I mentioned. But what you will find is rents have also gone up. So
Yeah,
whereas you might be thinking, I mean, we talk about Leeds and Sheffield, we're talking about rental being in the 750 to 900 bracket typically.
yeah,
That might now be 800 to 950. So
of
that's gone
course.
up as well. So the rental will support a little bit of a higher rate than it would a couple of months ago. Excuse me. However, in certain areas, you might need to go to 30% or a slightly higher deposit. But you're right, if the deposit you're putting in is slightly more and your loan to value, the amount you're borrowing is slightly less, there are better rates available.
Perfect. So what we're saying
Excuse me.
ultimately is that if you're investing in a buy to let, you should potentially be prepared for the fact that you might have to put in a little bit more money. And also, what we're saying is potentially this could be not necessarily forever. It might just be for the short term. Let's say you do a 2-year fixed term, you put in a bit more money right now so that you can buy the property a bit cheaper. But then in 2 years' time, once the market's picked up again, you can actually refinance back out the entire amount that you
Absolutely.
wanted anyway. Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
potentially, yeah.
Fabulous. And just moving on from that same point, then is how does this affect this stress test that you're talking about? How does it affect properties in, say, London versus properties in, say, Leeds and Sheffield where we buy? Is there some difference in the amount that people can borrow in both of these locations?
It's the stress test remains the same whichever part of the country you are.
Fine.
But what you'll find is it's that much harder in the south because property prices are that much more.
Compared to the rental that they're achieving.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So the yields don't allow 30s, 35. Sometimes you're going to have to go to 50%. More so in the south than those pockets. I mean, Leeds and Sheffield is a perfect example. We can do somewhere between 25 and 40%. It's
Yeah.
very difficult in some places in the south, primarily London and the outskirts of London, to potentially get a mortgage with a deposit at that level.
Okay.
It's proving that much harder. So there is a definite slight divide north and south.
Perfect. And of course, what that will mean is that people who are looking to invest in buy to let right now, because they're saying, well, I've only got a certain amount of deposit and I want to make that money go as far as possible for myself, I might be looking, rather than looking at London and Southeast now, just looking a bit further north, wherever that it might be, north and west, I suppose, out into the rest of
Yeah.
the regions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. Yes.
Fabulous. And then, what do you think then, Bhaven? Because you are, our mystic Meg. You are our crystal ball, and I know you're going to give us all the caveats about why you can't tell us what the rates are going to be and all that stuff, and we take all of that into account. But if you had to predict, what I want you to do is give us an indication so that our clients, get an understanding where we were in June, July last year, where we were in September, October, November last year, where we are right now, where you think we will be in the middle of this year, and where you think we'll be at the end of this year. That would be really useful.
In terms of the Bank of England base rate or
Not the
mortgage
Bank of England base rate, mortgage rates. Yeah.
rate? Okay. So I think mortgage rates, again, it's going to be broadly speaking because there is a difference between the type of mortgage you get, whether it's in personal names,
Of course.
2 years,
Yeah,
five
let's talk
years.
buy to let, general,
Yeah.
limited company, something like that ish.
I think for the immediate 3 to 6 months until now, till middle of the year, maybe the third quarter, we're going to be into the mid to high fours
Yeah.
as a starting point.
Yeah.
If inflation is in check and we expect it to go as it is being spoken of and reduces, it might maintain that sort of level. If anything, it might dip slightly. So we
Okay.
might find potentially the low fours to really high threes might creep back in towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I think the outlook for 24 is we should be below four, but for a lot more clients than we are, at the moment. I mean, at the moment, there's very little or none. We expect some of that, but a lot more opportunity for next year. But immediately, we're expecting it, like I say, to stay where it is within 0.25% this way, that way, into the fours.
Cool. So just to backtrack then, what we're saying is that, say, middle of last year, we would have been looking at, say, the 3% type of mark. Then we came to September and all this uncertainty, and that 3% became, 6%, 7%, that kind of range. And then now we're kind of at the high fours, low fives type mark. And what we think is going to happen for certainly the next sort of 3 to 6 months is that we'll be at the similar sort of level. And then I suppose looking a longer term way out, so let's say in a year from now, we're looking at, instead of being at the high fours, low fives, we might be at what, 0.5% less than that? Do you think?
So we should comfortably be in the fours,
Okay.
and potentially the low fours as well. A lot more low fours.
Fantastic.
But it's a brighter outlook.
Perfect. So 0.5 to 1%. But what I'm trying to get the point across is, whilst there is a reduction, it doesn't necessarily make sense, because some people are saying this to me. They're saying, well, Shiv, if interest rates are reducing, mortgage interest rates, well, I'll just wait until they're reduced and then I'll buy when it's reduced. What's the challenge with that, Bhaven?
Well, when firstly, you don't know, the property price might change as well, because if it becomes a lot more affordable, prices will start going up again. So you might make in one and not the other.
Yeah.
But look, again, we don't know. I mean, the scaremongering, it could go flat the other way, and all of a sudden the rates could go that way, and you missed out the opportunity today. So probably that's not necessarily the right way to look at things. Property is a long-term thing. Now, you could buy today, and typically most people keep their properties for 20, 25 years. Some people don't even sell, they pass it on. You're always going to get the ups and downs in those rates. So to choose that perfect moment, I'm not sure it exists. I think you say it very well in one of your sayings, is the best time to buy property was 10 years ago. The second best time is now. Just find the second best time. Everybody choose the second best time, because very seldom do we get it the best time.
Yeah. Well, one of Warren Buffett's sayings is, the problem is that nobody wants to get rich slow. Everybody wants to get rich tomorrow. And I think another way of just picking up on the thread that you've just left there, one of the examples that I give to people is I say, 20 years ago when my parents were buying their first home, or whatever it was, their home at that time, 20, 30 years ago, the house might have been £100,000 in London, £100,000. And they said, oh my God, right, we've got to buy it now for £100,000. And they put down their deposit and they went ahead and bought the house for £100,000. And they went down to the pub or the meeting or whatever, and somebody said, £100,000, oh my God, I bought one on the next street for £99,000 or £98,000. I bought it for £1,000 or £2,000 cheaper. And of course, back then it's 1 or 2%. That's a huge percentage rate increase. But now when we look at it and the houses are worth £600,000, £700,000, £800,000, it's like, do we really care that we could have bought it £1,000 less or not? Because actually what could have happened is they could have gone down to that pub and then been scared off from buying completely, not bought it, and then not got any of the increase as well.
Right. Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've heard opportunities.
Definitely. So you've heard it not just from you now, audience, you've heard it from Bhaven as well, who is our Mystic Meg, our Oracle. He said the best time to buy property was 20 years ago. So if you can go back into the past, 20 years ago, exactly today, 6th of March is the right time to buy. And if you can't, then the next best time to buy, Bhaven, is?
Now.
Now. Fantastic. Perfect. Just for what it's worth for the audience, I was speaking to a banker who runs Goldman Sachs, actually. And he said to me, because I said to him at the beginning of this year, I said, look, we are here where we are today. I said, at the end of this year, today is the 1st of January, on the 31st of December, if house prices are here today on the 1st of January, where are we going to be at the 31st of December? Are we going to be higher, lower, or about the same? And do you know what he said to me, Bhaven? What do you think he said to me?
Probably slightly higher, same or slightly higher.
Same or slightly higher is exactly what he said to me. He says, we're not going to be lower. We're going to be the same or slightly higher. And to give you some more insight, here's what I think is going to happen from January until December. January, we start, let's say, using £100,000 as the base. We start at 100. We then go down a little bit. We've been told we're going to go down between 5 and 7%. We're already in that kind of space right now. So we're at about £95,000. That lasts until about April, May, June time. And then it starts to increase again. And then it ends the year at, say, £102,000, £105,000. Now, why am I telling people that it lasts until, say, the middle of this year or something like that? because interest rates are where they are. We've just talked about those, and they're at the almost at the peak of where we think they're going to be. Mortgage interest rates, however, are reducing steadily, and they're reducing because the certainty in the market is beginning to return. Certainly, the uncertainty is dissipating. But more importantly than that, inflation, which is the annual percentage increase in the price of goods and services, actually started around this kind of time last year, April, May, June kind of time last year. So that means that when we look at this year's pricing, it's not going to be another 10% on top. If it had increased by 6% last year, it will only be another 4% this year. So inflation is going to reduce massively in this next quarter, next 2 quarters. And as a result, once inflation figures reduce and that then gets posted on the media and that gets posted everywhere, people will say, hold on a second, there is no recession that's going to come. World is not going to end. It's going to look okay. And, maybe we should reconvene those plans that we had for investment. And so towards the, say, 3/4 of the way through the year, July, August, September time, people will say, oh, maybe I want to get involved with investing. They'll then start picking up the investments. And as they start trying to buy buy-to-let properties, the prices will increase again. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that there is a little window of opportunity here between 3 and 6 months long right now for us to get involved and buy those properties at between 5, 7, maybe even 10% cheaper than where they are right now, so that we can secure that before the property prices start to increase again. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
So that's been really, really great, Bhaven. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. I know that you're a busy man, and I know that you have a lot of industry connections. So, you're very well keyed in. What's, although you can't tell us, you have an idea of what you think is going to happen. It's just very interesting to follow these things as they go through. And I hope that for you listeners, you get the best from this podcast. If you have any questions, then please feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be tagging Bhaven into this on social media as well, so you can get in touch with him if you have any questions. Perfect. Thanks, Bhaven, and speak soon.
Thank you, Chef. Thanks.